Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Paranormal Lens, presented by Jott-Nyx Paranormal. I am Jamie Widener. I'm your host this evening, along with the marvelously talented Chad Thomas. Good evening, sir. As always.
Uh,
What's shaking?
it's just been a busy week. Lots going on. So,
Yeah, life, right?
yeah, I sent out a big job at work that had to go across the country and
Ooh,
um, for a big show out in Las Vegas. So that was interesting. A lot of work in too little time, and
right.
got
No,
stuff right on its heels. So
hey, it was easy. Somebody else would be doing it. So,
exactly. So what about
hey,
you, Jamie?
it's been a week as well. We have my industry. We have a trade show at my office, my home office location tomorrow. So it's been a week of getting ready and a lot of special guests coming through today. Busy show floor tomorrow. So it's the fun stuff, the work that equals the fun stuff. Now you get to do the pretty things. Like that's
Right.
what you create, and everybody's like wowed by it. I'm the one that has to walk around and talk about the stuff afterwards. So we make a good team that way, I guess.
We do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah,
well,
it's
speaking of
my
that.
energy day tomorrow, so I'm just trying to low key today.
Okay. We had a college fair. I work in the live event industry, and
Yep.
we have a campus that there's a lot of vendors that do the same thing on the campus. And last Friday we had a college fair, and the wrap up event was a meet and greet, and I jumped in to help our HR people meet college kids and talk about what we do. And there were 3 or 4 of us doing it the other night, and not my norm, but I like to push myself out of the box every now and then, and so that's what I was doing Friday night, and it was exhausting.
Talking to people is like this. This is different.
Hmm.
Because it's fun, right? We
Right.
like it. Work is work,
Mm.
and obviously, if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. That adage, I think, is fairly true. At least not a heavy thing, but it's when you're out of your comfort zone and you're out of your box, and you're you know what you do. And I know what I do. We all know what we all do,
Right.
right? Kind of thing. And when you're interested in something, you could talk about it forever. And I bet you found that once you started, it was hard to stop.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
it's like the chip thing. Once you pop, you just can't stop.
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
So,
and it's fascinating like that. And then where'd the time go?
yep.
So very cool.
So it's good to
All right,
see Bert and Erica here tonight.
what are you
I'm
up at,
going to
Jackson?
Bert's
Welcome,
house.
guys. What's Bert's got something good going on here. Hold on a second. Get back to that.
Back up.
Just sat down with steak, baked potato, and broccoli. Make sure you eat all of that broccoli, sir, or else. I don't know what the else is, but or else. All right.
So,
Well, we are here to talk about something sort of paranormal tonight, Jed.
okay.
Um,
Sort
I'm going to sort of. So I know for paranormal lens, it should be paranormal, right? But this topic caught my eye and ear a little while ago, back in the summer, I think, and I tossed it around a little bit whether we should or shouldn't. But the more I thought about it, and the more I researched it, the more I'm like, yeah, I think we should. Um, I'm going to tell you this, and I maybe this is a poll to present to our audience. But as I was doing this, I felt like this episode became a cross between um, an episode of Drunk History, or what could be an episode of Drunk History. Okay, fantastic, funny show.
Mhm.
People literally get drunk and talk about history and talk and talk and talk, and it's reenacted by like true actors and professionals. Um,
Which we are not.
Comedy Central, I believe. A couple seasons, really funny stuff. Go back and watch it. It's out there. Or the Who's What books. If you remember those, the kids' books about a biography about a person.
Hmm.
So I think this is going to be somewhere in between the two.
Okay.
I'm drinking water, I swear. So it's not going to be drunk history, but it could be. It could be. So let's get to it.
All right.
And I see Jim's here. Good evening, Jim. Thanks for joining, as always. Um, tonight we're going to talk about someone named Rose Mackenberg. Any idea who Rose Mackenberg is, Chad?
Uh, I do know because I had to do the preview. So,
All right. Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
Otherwise, before that, any idea?
I had heard the name. Um, I knew traveled in the same paths as Houdini, but I didn't know all the details. So,
Right.
But I bet you're going to fill them in, aren't you?
I'm going to fill in a lot of them. And the thing is this: most people don't know who she is, and it's because she didn't want you to. So,
Okay.
an intentional thing. Um, and as I go through this, I think you'll understand why. But what she did wound up being quite interesting and I think beneficial to a lot of people. Um, Certainly not for those who she did things to or against, I guess is a better word.
Hmm.
But I think in the whole, once we get all the story out, we'll understand the intent a whole lot better. So I guess there's no place to start but the beginning, right?
Right.
So it all started when she was born. No,
Maybe not that far back.
so we are gonna go back then. So that was July 10th of 1892, and in Brooklyn, New York, Rose Mackenberg was born to Russian immigrants. She was a lifelong New Yorker. Being born in Brooklyn, I think she wound up settling out to the Bronx eventually, and had an apartment there for quite a long time. Um, by all accounts, she had a normal childhood. There honestly isn't a whole lot of reports about her childhood that makes you think it's normal because she wanted to be under the radar. She was always under the radar. She was a survivor of the Spanish flu, and as a result, she was a self professed spiritual believer. And then, we all went through a significant worldwide pandemic, and I think a lot of us came out the other side a little bit more believing than we might have gone in. So I can understand that.
Hmm.
Her first job was as a court stenographer in a legal office, and later she was a private investigator for the same legal company, legal firm. While she was working as a private investigator, she was called upon by a banker to investigate a medium who insisted that he invest in a stock that proved to be worthless, except for the investment, no return.
Okay.
During her investigation, was recommended that she consult with Harry Houdini, and we all know who Harry Houdini is, right?
Hmm.
Might have to be another episode if we don't. And he was already on a mission to discredit and expose psychic swindlers. Houdini advised Rose on how to uncover the fraud and then recruited her to join his efforts. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Okay.
So, the Houdini connection. Harry Houdini, the renowned illusionist and escape artist, attended hundreds of seances trying to communicate with his dead parents before realizing that many self described seers were in fact con artists soaking the gullible. Houdini himself once hinted at having occult powers of his own, but ultimately declared that his stage act was merely a sleight of hand, so again, as an illusionist.
Hmm.
By 1924, however, Houdini wasn't content with just renouncing any claim to having mystic abilities of his own. That year, he published A Magician Among the Spirits, a book in which he debunked some of the effects that mediums produced, like wobbling tables and floating objects. Whenever any of these alleged spiritual mediums tell you that they have supernatural aid, he told a reporter at the time, you may safely set them down as frauds. To expose fake psychics, Houdini employed a small army of undercover agents. Sorry, at one point there were 20 in total, calling them my own Secret Service. Rose Mackenberg was his foremost operative. By her account, Mackenberg investigated more than 300 psychics and seers in the 2 full years she worked for Houdini, and many more after that. In a career that lasted decades and led her to testify before Congress, more on that in a minute, she proved to be quick witted, adept with disguises, and unblinkingly skeptical. Speaking to a reporter for the Hearst newspapers in 1949, she boasted, I smell a rat before I smell the incense. It's language we don't use anymore, by the way. I
Right.
smell a rat.
Hmm.
Yeah, we're going to bring it back, Chad. That's it. In fact, she was so good at exposing false mediums and scammers that her name was commonly found on mob-like hit lists, so much so that Houdini urged her, to carry a sidearm for her own protection. She refused, and as it turns out, a gun was never needed, as her best feature was her ability to blend in to be nearly invisible in the cities she would visit. Interestingly, a greater concern to her was that she was often groped and even propositioned by what she called flim-flam men at the seances she attended. There's another good word, flim-flam.
Hmm.
Bringing it back. All right. Mackenberg adopted a variety of disguises for the seances, and she explained in a 1929 news article among them was the rustic school teacher, the credulous servant girl, the tipsy consultant, and she used synonyms like Alicia Bunk, a play on all is bunk, and Francis R. I'm sorry, I got to say this right, Gus. It won't be as funny as it should be. Francis Rod, or F. Rod, for of course fraud.
Mm-hmm.
At least she had a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Often she claimed to be a grieving mother or a bereft widow. Some of her cases, and unfortunately, I couldn't find too many of these, which I think is a travesty because there's got to be, with 300 or so, and then many more, under the Houdini era, and many more later. I think there should be some good documentation. I just had trouble finding it, so I'm sure there's a resource somewhere. I just didn't see it yet.
Okay.
But in 1925, Mackenberg visited Charles Gonzalez, a medium in Indianapolis, who had described himself as an irate. I'm sorry, he described himself in an irate letter to Houdini as one of the leaders of spiritualism in America. Pretending to be a bereaved mother, Mackenberg told Gonzalez that her baby had died a few months earlier and that she wanted to check on the infant in the afterlife. Gonzalez claimed to have contact with an 800-year-old Hindu guide in the spirit world, as well as his own spirit wife, as he called her, named Ella. He told Mackenberg that for $25 he could teach her to access the afterlife by gazing into a bowl of water. He then said it would be easier for her to make contact with the Hindu guide if she took off her clothes. She declined. She reported her findings to Houdini, who arrived in Indianapolis 6 weeks later to give a performance that Gonzalez attended. Houdini confronted him from the stage, telling the audience about Mackenberg's experiences. Gonzalez mumbled from his seat that he too abhorred fraud and fled the theater to jeers and catcalls from the audience. So, a little something.
Mm-hmm.
In another example, Mackenberg exposed the self-proclaimed spiritualist pastor Herman E. Parker from Chicago as a fraud. Dressed as a dour local widow called Mrs. Rosalind Richards, she visited Parker for a private sitting to see if he could contact her fictionally deceased husband. Sure enough, after falling into a trance, Parker managed to bring him forth. An ability to contact non-existing family members was a fairly typical finding from such investigations. However, Mackenberg wanted to probe further. What else was Parker doing to his vulnerable clients? Just as Parker was bringing her sitting to a close, Mackenberg let slip through crocodile tears that she, as Richards, needed to ask her husband whether she should accept the $3,000 settlement for his death. Suddenly, Parker took a renewed interest and asked the spirit for advice. Remarkably, he recommended taking the money and investing $1,000 of it in a company called Wilcox Transportation Company. It just so happened that Parker had created the company with a Confederate. Mackenberg played along, gathered evidence, and then presented her findings to the Investigative Protective Bureau. Parker and his long-running accomplice, John F. Wilcox, were tried and found guilty of fraud. Mackenberg had used deception, method acting, misdirection, and trickery to prove the malign fraud, while educating the public about a form of deception that she felt was unethical by writing about her experiences in the popular press. Her investigative work took her around the world, and she worked for hundreds of cases over a 30-year period. So I mentioned earlier about Congress, right? She testified.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the story, and this one's interesting as well. In 1926 is when this occurred. If you'll recall, I mentioned earlier that she testified before Congress. So here's that story. As part of Houdini's crusade against fraudulent mediums, two congressmen, Senator Royal S. Copeland and Representative Saul Bloom, sponsored an amendment to the Washington, D.C. law that would essentially ban fortune-telling in the nation's capital. The proposal was met with stiff resistance from the spiritualist community, who charged that it would infringe on their right to religious freedom. An initial hearing before the House subcommittee was held for the bill in February of 26, with 3 more days of testimony in May coming. With a showman like Houdini at the helm, the hearing, unsurprisingly, was a spectacle. According to Rose Mackenberg, the days were filled with near riots, a welter of conflicting testimony, shouting objections, muttered oaths, and copious tears, as Houdini and the spiritualists battled it out. Like the entertainer he was, Houdini showed the fascinated committee how some of the medium's tricks were performed. In an attention-grabbing stunt, he even offered $10,000 to any medium present who could demonstrate that their claims of otherworldly communication were true. Now, Chad, $10,000 in 1926. Do the math.
Yeah.
not $10,000, right? I mean, how many? Wow. The ruckus got so bad that one day's hearing had to be adjourned to restore order. They had to clear the room. But the biggest bombshell of the hearing, at least as far as the news media was concerned, was dropped by Mackenberg herself. Prior to the May hearings, Houdini had sent his undercover investigators, including Mackenberg, to visit these suspected phony mediums in D.C. and gather evidence against them. During her testimony, Mackenberg alleged that two spiritualists had independently divulged that a number of their clients were U.S. senators, and she even went so far as to reveal the names of four of those senators while on the stand. But most shocking of all, Mackenberg testified that one of the mediums, Jane Coates, had boasted that seances had been held inside the White House with President Coolidge and his family present. Spiritualists vehemently refuted Mackenberg's account, and the Coolidge administration unofficially denied the seances, but the story was rich fodder for newspapers, which published headlines like "Washington goes in for spooky stuff." And Houdini agent says Coolidge held seances. Ultimately, and despite the theatrics, Houdini's bill failed to garner sufficient congressional support, and the famed magician died just 5 months later. Bum, bum, bum.
Right.
So,
Jamie, that was $178,136.
I knew you were going to Google it. It's crazy money, right?
Yeah.
And it's still available, apparently. So, Ah, all right. Well, Mackenberg went on to continue debunking false mediums for another 30 years. She investigated cases on behalf of banks, chambers of commerce, civic groups, police, lawyers, district attorneys, insurance and trust companies, private citizens, and more. This, in fact, was the way she earned a living for the rest of her life. As a widely acknowledged expert, she wrote newspaper and magazine articles exposing trade secrets of fraudulent mediums, and even let a few journalists shadow her on the job in the 1940s. She also went on lecture tours and appeared on radio and television shows, at least through the mid-50s. She always maintained that she had no problem with sincere believers in spiritualism. She simply wanted to expose the people who used it to con the grief-stricken and desperate. In fact, Mackenberg herself was open to the possibility of communication with spirits, but as she said in the 1953 newspaper article, "In 30 years of searching, I've never found solid evidence of it." So,
Hmm.
some fun facts.
Mm-hmm.
She did write an autobiography, but it was never published. It's called So You Want to Attend a Seance. Sounds like a fun read.
Mm-hmm.
In the line of duty, Mackenberg was ordained by so many spiritualist churches, and always for a fee, that her nickname in the Houdini organization was the Rev, and she was officially ordained 6 times. Rosa lived in the same apartment at 310 West 24th Street in Manhattan for decades and always kept it well lit. Why, you ask? She told the Hearst Syndicate in 1949, after years of attending seances, I get tired of dark rooms. And I don't blame her. Uh, she found that there were trends in the spiritualism trade, and there were always upticks during times of war, since people wanted solace that their loved ones were and would be okay. Makes sense.
Yeah, that's
She quoted, "I never married," and she told the St. Louis Post-Dispatch in 1937, "but I have received messages from 1,000 husbands and twice as many children in the world to come. Invariably, they told me they were happy where they were, which was not entirely flattering to me." In a
yeah,
1949 Hearst Syndicate article described her perhaps as the only woman ghostbuster in the world. By how the times have changed.
yeah.
So some statistics here, from then to now. And this is a little bit old, so bear with me, at least the first part of it. But in 2018, there was a study from an organization called Ibisworld, IBISWORLD, showed that psychic services in the U.S. had a net worth of 2.2 billion per dollars per year. That's billion with a buh.
Wow.
And just checked on it again as of August of 24 this year. That total is now 2.4 billion with a buh per year. Services include astrology, psychic, and aura reading as the primary resources. Most people utilizing these services reside in urban settings all across the U.S. in the major cities. There are low barriers to no barriers for access to providing services, which of course has expanded the revenue options for people.
Mm-hmm.
So, in closing, Perhaps this industry has seen such extensive growth and a significant increase is because Rose Mackenberg and her contemporaries are no longer on the job exposing those who would take advantage of others' grief to bilk them out of their money. Maybe.
Hmm.
So before we discuss, I'd like to cite some sources. The NewYorkTimes.com, Atlas Obscura, our good friends there where this idea came from. Of course, IbisWorld.com, WordPress.com, and Chad, I think you might know this one, newspapers.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that to be fascinating. So, ladies and gentlemen, Rose Mackenberg. And again, that could have been a drunk history episode.
Yeah. It could have.
So, what do you think, sir?
I
No,
mean,
I'm not going to ask paranormal or not, obviously.
right. I think she was a remarkable woman. She did a lot. She did a lot to go through and get rid of frauds. I would say probably still for every one or two true mediums, psychics, whatever you want to call them now, we have dozens, if not hundreds, of frauds out there.
Yeah.
Um, so it's just it doesn't take much to hang a sign up that says psychic medium. Like you said, there's no schooling, there's no professional standards bureau, there's nothing of that.
Right.
So it
Well,
makes it tough. So
you can go, and I didn't pull this in to just to give you exactly like a link to it, but I know you can go to like Amazon, and if you look up neon signs, you'll find like psychic readings. You
mhm,
can stick it in your window, plug it in, and there you are. You're in business.
right,
No, yeah, and I want to believe, and I do believe that there are truly ethical people out there, and we know them, right? We know a lot of them
right,
from where we are with what we do, and the connections we've made through the years. And I have no doubt, I have absolutely no doubt, believing that those individuals are 100% legit. I
mhm,
trust them. They're friends, but for again, as you said it really well, for every one, there's a dozen more that aren't, and we don't know. And it's a good thing that we don't.
right,
But I think my advice here for anyone who is considering, using these services is to vet the individual. We live in a world where information's at our fingertips, and it's everything. Everybody leaves a review for everything. So, you know, if they don't have a review or they don't have any information visible to you electronically and digitally, then I would ask for references. You need something more. And at the end of the day, it's our hard-earned money that we're spending for the things we vote with our dollars, right? For the things we like and want and need.
mhm,
And then the second part of that is that if we are already grieving and we are taken to the wrong direction, it's not helpful, and it just hurts even more when it's found out that it's untrue
right,
and you've been taken advantage of. So, obviously, I always say, caution, caution, caution.
mhm,
Vet the resource, vet the source,
right.
and then go from there. Nothing against mediums, nothing against those with abilities. I rely on people in investigations all the time. I mean, that's Sarah is a sensitive person yourself.
Mhm.
Aside from all the crying you do, um,
We weren't going to go into that, Jamie.
I'm sorry. Sorry, don't cry, don't cry. But I can't imagine going to being at investigations without the connection that we have with a lot of individuals, and I
Right.
trust them. I love them all.
Mhm.
So I don't want this to come across as a smash or a bash kind of situation. I thought this was really interesting, and it started with Houdini, and
Right.
here's a person with resources who had a lot of resources, because of who he was and his position in the world at that time and his fame. It came with trappings of good things, of like resources, like being money,
Right.
and he could afford to do this. But he had a need, a want to connect with his mother and his family,
Right.
and she was near and dear to him, and passed too soon, and
Right.
he wanted to find her again and open that connection. And if things were true and honest and real, and he would have been able to do that, none of this would have ever happened.
Right. Didn't he also have something set up with his wife? I know this wasn't where the story was tonight,
Yeah.
but didn't he also have something set up with his wife that she continued searching for true mediums, and
Yeah.
there was a code word that they had that
Exactly. So that way she would know it was him. It's a safe word, if you will.
right.
Uh, and of course that never happened either. but and also some of that was the monies were the resources were still available for
Hmm.
folks like Mackenberg and the other members of his investigative team for at least a while, and then they all kind of dissipated and
Right.
went their separate ways once the resources were truly ended. So ah, here we go. Hey Bert. Bert says, I know psychic mediums exist. I'm married to one. I don't believe there are as many as self-proclaimed to be. I'm very skeptical of those people. Yeah, I agree. And I
Yeah.
think it was well said in the earlier part of the article or the conversation here was, when talking about, let me go back here so I can find it real quick. Um, Yeah, Houdini actually says whenever any of these alleged spiritual mediums tell you that they have supernatural aid, you may safely set them down as frauds. And it's kind of like if you brag, you probably not true. You
Right.
know, so I think that's what he's going for in that comment or that quote. Um, and that's not to say people shouldn't talk themselves up. That's not the point at all. At least
Right.
I read it. But those who are pushing it forward and trying to get resources for it, like get paid to do it, maybe there is something fraudulent there going on. Um, but you have to be, it's like anything else. You get out of sight, you get out of mind. So
Hmm.
you got to mark it somehow. So it's a fine line, I think.
It is.
Yeah, that's a good comment, Bert. Thank you. So, guys, what do y'all think out there? I probably put y'all to sleep with this a little bit. Not the true spooky stuff we're used to from us, but um, there's definitely a connection to the paranormal. That would be worthwhile having a discussion.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Again, I found out more about her than I ever knew in the past. So
Again, it could be a "Who Were They" book, right? Is that what
yeah,
it's called? Who were they? Who was? Oh, who was?
yeah.
There's a bunch of them somewhere in this house. I know it.
Who
I've
was
read a lot
George
of them.
Washington? Who was Abraham Lincoln? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. I read a lot of them aloud. So,
hmm.
and they were informative. They're not short books. They're 20, 30 pages, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, it's enough. All right. Well, sir,
I don't
no
have
one
any
has
other
anything.
thoughts.
Yeah, if nothing else to add, we can have an early night. This will be great.
Yeah. So, well, yeah. And again, thank you for jumping into it, Jamie. Thanks for
Yeah.
looking and finding out some interesting information. See what Heather has to say here.
Yep. And I'll read it aloud. So this is from Heather. It is an easy way for people to take advantage of others. Me personally, I would never charge anyone ever for anything. I would I would receive from the other side. Anything I would receive. I got to remember how to read better. Jeez. Sorry, Heather. I would just not feel right about it. And I get that. Absolutely. And we know you. So that's totally you. I get that too. And
And
I think that's the difference,
and I know
and
a lot of people are very hesitant to even share that they have abilities and that they have information. So, sorry. It just you just don't want to put it out there and you know mislead people, have people take it the wrong way, all those things. Um, so yeah, I know people are very hesitant about it.
well, I can't speak to this, but I have a supposition,
Hmm.
and I can only imagine that once the cork is off the bottle, you can't put it back on again, right?
Right.
So people will expect you to be able to do this, and do the reading and do the whatever that connection is, whatever you want to call it, on demand. Then,
Right.
and I don't know that that's I don't believe that's how it works. And the the challenge then, of course, is trying to find the balance, with people and
Right.
set expectations and fairness.
Right.
Um, or if it's always on too, what is that like? Like for that person who has
Right.
the ability. I can imagine the challenge of just knowing when to do what, and
Hmm.
how much do you need to share.
Right.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
Um,
Bird had a comment here. It said, "I made Heather come out, but only to close friends." So
And the smiley face after that come out part too.
So,
It's good.
but Jamie, I know that that's something that people struggle with, um, who have this ability is they have to learn how to control it, turn it off, or they once they're open, like you said, once the cork's
Yeah,
out, they can be bombarded all the time with messages from the spirits.
sure.
So it's
Oh, did we not have this conversation with John Covey a year or so ago when he was a guest?
right.
Uh, about the challenge there. When do you know what to share with someone that you read? Especially a stranger. Like something strong may come through and clear and obvious, but how do you present that at that point? Without seeming like
Hmm.
I'm called a weirdo. That's probably the polite way to say it, but
Right.
you know, being out of your place,
Right.
perhaps.
Heather's
What do
got another interesting comment here.
you,
Besides, I have no idea how anyone calls specific people. Who comes through, comes through. I'm not sold on anyone being able to do that.
it's fair.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know some people believe they have the ability to remote read places, things like that. So I don't know. It's not a skill that I have.
Sure.
Therefore, definitely have not developed it to this point. So I'm curious too.
I can only imagine, and I'm not at all sensitive. I'm insensitive. You know this. People who know me know I'm insensitive, um, but I'm like the opposite of sensitive anyway. With this, and I can't understand the tipping point there, but I have a lot of empathy for the struggle that must exist. On the whole, um, and I can't imagine that it's like any other skill with some for lack of a better word refinement or training or whatever that word is that I'm not coming up with very clearly. Practice, you know to have some better, not lack for lack of a better word, control, but um, direction,
Development.
focus,
Yes.
development. Thank you. Yes, you always use the good words, dude. um, and I don't know that that's true, but that's from the skills and talents that you learn. You don't know how to do everything with it first thing the first time you
Right.
touch something or do something. So I guess that's there, but I don't know how that would ever be. Like what's that look like? There's not a class somewhere, that at least I'm aware of. Maybe there is. Maybe there's something. Um, maybe there's some developmental
There are
thing out there.
classes, but again,
I'd like to know more. Is my point.
right,
I'm really curious about this. Now that we're really getting into it, like how that does work and what it looks like.
right, yeah. It's there's definitely classes out there, but you have to. It's really difficult to explain. Like I went through a class and I developed some skills, um, but I didn't, and it takes commitment because you do have to focus and practice and just like we do with the investigations, there's grounding and centering.
Yes.
You have to do that on a daily basis and spend time doing that and meditating and like to develop some of these skills if they are not innately natural to you. And
Gotcha.
it's a time commitment. So,
Gotcha. Well, Bert just figured it out. It's Hogwarts.
well, that's, yeah,
There it is. Right there. It's in
I,
print.
we need to
On,
find platform 9 3/4 and
just
just,
get a running start.
yeah.
Don't be late. The ball hurts. Trust me, I know. Um,
Did I get that reference right, Jamie?
you did. I'm proud of you. Very proud of you. Your kids are proud of you too.
So,
Well, and yeah, it's all another fantastical thing, right? Hogwarts and all that. But um, no, I think that at the um, at the end of the day, we don't have the support of a person like Mackenberg or Houdini anymore, and that's a curious thing, like how that has all slid away. And it's well, we live in a litigious world where people sue each other all the time, and you can't slander anybody, and you can't talk crap on people, or
right.
else you find yourself in a in a lawsuit or a courtroom. So I guess there's a challenge to that, and these were events too. you know, um, when there were settings and things, they were in open spaces. You've gone to gallery reads, Chad. I know this.
I have, yep.
And that room is full of people. I don't know how many, but say a dozen or 20 or 50 people. You know, to bring that group in on a regular, with some frequency, and whatever that ticket price was, which of course, is 1920 something money, but
Hmm.
good money no matter what. You're it's the world isn't the same as it was then. you
Right,
know Now it's a lot different. It's a lot more tricky to
right.
kind of debunk people,
Hmm.
because you don't want to get yourself on set for liability.
Right. I
Excuse me.
mean, and you're right. I have attended some gallery reads, and it, what comes through that they connect to certain people is pretty amazing. Like
Sure.
and I mean, I'm not going to name names, but there was one that I've seen a couple times, and I just find it intriguing, and so that's one of the reasons that I'll go see them. But the one guy that I've seen will the day 3 or 4 days before the reading is set for, he will go through like a local newspaper or a magazine, and he's guided to 3 or 4 things that he pulls out.
Okay.
And those things may be a name like Charles, or he's a firefighter, or he liked to bet on the ponies, or, you know, 3 or 4 things like that. And then when he starts his reading, it's broken up into 2 sessions, one where he's doing these things that he's found. He goes through and he lists these 6 or 7 things, and he said it has never failed that he has somebody who in the audience who connects with all of those things. And then something comes through, and whatever comes through connects to that person or that group of people, and it's pretty amazing. So it makes you wonder if it is just how it all works.
Sure. Well, I'm gonna go the other way.
Hmm.
And it just struck me that I was trying to remember this, through the last couple of days, and kept getting distracted from it. But it takes me to that kind of a thing. That kind of generalization takes me to the television show from the early 2000s, I think, called Psych.
Hmm.
Okay. Remember this show at all?
I
It was
remember
on
very
USA.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, a guy whose dad was a detective who was pretty hard on him all his life. But he ingrained in him all of the detail oriented things that good detectives would do. And he was kind of down on his luck, I think, and utilized it to get into a situation where he came up with a psychic for the police. And all it was attentiveness and deduction and common sense and stuff like that. But several seasons later, this show somehow still stays on the air when we all know as the audience that he's phony.
Right.
But and some are skeptical of him, which makes sense. But on the whole, he keeps his job on a yearly basis. Year over year, he keeps this position, um, based on just no real ability. Other than just
Just being
ingenuity.
perceptive.
Yeah,
I mean,
being a detective, essentially. Yeah,
that's what he was. He was perceptive and could pick up details about what was going on in their life, which is how a lot of the charlatans in the 20s and 30s were doing this.
sure.
We're getting clues that people didn't realize they were giving them clues. So,
Yeah. Well, I say this to the kids all the time. I said, you will learn so much more by paying attention to where you are,
mhm,
and you will from reading something. I mean, the information about it. Like, just listen in the room, be in the space. Clear the take the distractions away, and you pay attention. You'll learn a whole lot, and it'll be things that may surprise you.
mhm.
And
Oh, and I think that's true
I'm
with
not
all
saying I'm
of us.
100% right on that, but I think it's true. It's served me well through the years.
Mhm,
It's something we don't do enough of either. We don't tune out the noise of other things
right.
anymore.
I'm going to put this comment from Heather up. Said, I have had bad experiences telling people what I get. Most people do not want to hear it, and I sound like a crazy lady. I can't tell you how many times I get stuff about people and do not say it and nothing. Bert says I should start telling people, but I'm uncomfortable with it. Most people shopping at Walmart do not want me going up to them telling me that their dead friend is following them around while they shop.
Well, unless they owe money. Um, Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier too, like that uh, tipping point of finding the balance of where
Hmm.
the knowledge that you just gained, um, and then how well it's going to be received. I mean, perception is reality, right?
Right.
If you're, Heather, I'm going to say this, and it's not negative, I promise. Um, but if you believe it's going to be perceived negatively, then it's going to come across that way. It's how you present it. Um, Not everybody's going to get it. That's the point. I think that's a very good point. And or understand what you're sharing with them, or even comprehend all of it.
Hmm.
Um, but for that one person out of the whatever number who it really connects to them, and it gives them solace or comfort or joy, maybe a little fear. I don't know,
Hmm.
depending on the person that's following them. Whatever, it's gonna make them. It's gonna make their day for them and make them happy. And I think that makes everything else worthwhile.
Yeah. So Heather, don't take this way the wrong way, but Jamie, you know the show Ghosts, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I just see Heather walking around in a world like that, and just seeing all these people all the time who aren't there, and um,
You guys need to get an in. That's what it is. Yes, in Ireland.
in
Mind
Ireland. Yep.
you.
So, but I just I feel like that would be so cool in so many ways, but then so terrifying in so many ways at the
I
same time.
agree. I agree, and that's what I was thinking as well. And when there's it's always happening. Like you don't know what's going to be next. I think there's an old Michael J. Fox movie called The Frighteners. It's kind of like that too, where he has something happens as he bunks it. I mean, it's always when you bunk your head, right? Like that's some magic button somewhere on your head that you just depress it, and all of a sudden you can see things or hear things or whatever. But
Mhm.
that movie was kind of the same idea, and all of a sudden, people were coming to him, in the afterlife, trying to share something that was so very important to them,
Mhm.
and his job was then to try to figure out what happened or how to present it, to the world or to the person it was for.
Right.
Oof,
Bert's
um,
got another comment here. There are people that don't want to know what we know. They don't want to know what comes after. So,
sure, I
and
agree.
I'm going to twist that a little bit, Bert, because I'm going to say there are people who don't want to know what we think we know, because we're getting bits
Yeah,
and pieces, but I think there's a whole lot more that we don't understand, that um, we're shaded from. Where it's an intentional, like, we're not supposed to know because we probably couldn't handle it. I think we've had this discussion with Ron and Lourdes
we
when they've
did.
been on.
Yeah, we absolutely did.
Like, we couldn't handle it as humans. It would just blow our minds what's coming, what else is coming. And the timelines, the multiverses, the parallel verse, all those things. Just, there's a lot that I don't think we could understand it. So
Yeah.
all
Oh, see,
right.
that has a way of saying things, Bert. I was telling you that earlier. He always has the right words. I mumble and bumble until I run out of gas.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, I think it definitely, this topic definitely opens up conversation. So I think it was a really good topic, Jamie.
Oh, thanks, thanks. Again, just a fun. It was meant to be fun.
Hmm.
Obviously, there's some good humor in the tale, um, but it was, there's a lot of significance in there too. And it's like the Consumer Protection Agency for the paranormal world. You know, what they were working on, and it's just amazing that they were able to do as much work as they got done. And Houdini passed way too young.
Right.
Obviously, if he had lived longer, who knows how far it would have went. The congressional piece, and then even the claims of the seances in the White House, that was not taken well. You know,
No.
in this very spiritual thing happening that is not necessarily what you teach at church. And I don't know what the Coolidges were as far as religious affiliation, but I'm sure that was not, it was frowned upon in their church.
Right. But it
But
wouldn't have been the first seance in the White House. We know that.
well, yeah. So
So, um,
and here's people doing what people do, right? So I
right.
mean, because they're sitting in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I almost said
Mhm.
Philadelphia Avenue, Pennsylvania Avenue. To make them any. They still put their pants on the same way that
Mhm.
anybody else at any other location does. So, they have
Yep.
curiosities and needs, and this is the medium is going to, our spiritualist is going to do it for them, a psychic, whatever you want to call them. Sure.
Yep.
Cool.
Now, here's another good comment from Heather. She loves the show Ghosts.
Oh,
She says, I was at a funeral and I was told to tell someone that they needed to take better care of themselves, start taking their medication that they had stopped taking. I was not going to say anything, but it felt so strong. So I did go up and tell that man. He hugged me and started crying, thanking me. It felt good.
there you go. And that's what makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah. But I think it's figuring out that feeling of, yes, this person needs that message, and if you're being pushed by the spiritual side, then they know that they need that message.
Yep.
So
Yeah. And obviously there was a hard push there for just that. I'd like to believe, we've all lost someone,
mhm,
someone near and dear. And I'd like to believe just in that situation that someone's looking out for us, and if the opportunity from someone came to communicate or extend that communication, I would want someone to do it for me.
mhm,
So that's my point, Heather. The positive that comes with it is well worth the odd looks or the snarky comments or the whatevers. Trust your instincts.
yep.
Obviously, they've gotten you very far. Um, so just be you, and you'll be fine.
So cool.
And Bert too. Same thing. So,
So
ah,
well,
all
on
right.
that note, Jamie, should we
Yeah, we should
move?
probably move on. So it's getting there. So
So
after you, sir.
all right. Upcoming episodes. Next week I'm going to take us on a voyage on the Queen Mary. Talk about what happens there. I know several people who have investigated it and have had amazing experiences there. I've never been there. I'd love to get there, but not happening this year or next year. But at some point, it's on my bucket list. Um, the Jamie, that I just realized that this episode did not lead to the word road trip at all. So anyway, so that's next week. The week after that will be the Great Lakes Triangle.
There it is. You see, I don't know. I'm not counting this one because that was queued.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, Bert.
Um,
Well,
so
yes, road trip. Always yes, but
right.
yeah.
So the Great Lakes Triangle, that'll be Thanksgiving week.
Yep.
So
I'm gonna rename this too, and I apologize here. And I should have told you this before the episode so we could adjust it, but it's going to be the Lake Michigan Triangle specifically.
okay, all right.
Yeah, the Great Lakes Triangle is it is technically a thing because of points, but it's way too big. I'm going to focus on just
You're
Michigan.
gonna narrow it down.
Narrow it down.
All right.
There's enough. Don't worry.
Okay. Then the week after that, getting into December. Um, um, Getting into December, we're gonna get the Birdcage Theater.
Thanks. All right, Bert. I'll give it to you then. Fine.
Take you out to Tombstone. um,
We got backup. So, if for those listening and not watching, Bert said I hit send before you said it on YouTube, and Heather backed him up. He hit send before you said it. I was a witness, so I have no doubt.
we know it's about a 10-second delay, so we should
Yes,
give that into
I
account.
trust you.
So into December, yeah, I'm going to do the Birdcage Theater, and then Jamie is going to look at Urban Legends Part Two International,
International edition.
International
Feels
Edition.
like it should have that international drop on the side, like an angle.
Uh
You
huh.
know. So we'll have to get some graphics for that.
Jeez, Jamie, one more thing on my plate, huh?
Can you work on that for me?
And then the week after that, which would be December 17th, maybe we do like a year-end wrap up, Jamie,
Sure.
something like that.
The year that was.
Maybe we can get a guest or two on that night. We'll see. No promises,
Sure.
but maybe talk. I don't know, idea there. So
Ooh.
so all right. Well, that's what's coming up for the shows. Let's see. Jott-Nyx Paranormal upcoming events. We've got 2 investigations left. We've got the public investigation this Saturday. It's scheduled for this Saturday, so we'll see what happens. We've got some tickets still available, so if you want to get out there and join us. And then shortly after that, December 7th, we have another investigation at Booby's Brewery. So they're always a good time. And then you found us here on Facebook or YouTube, but here are the other places you can reach out to us. If we TikTok, Instagram, send us an email at paranormallenspodcast@gmail.com. Jamie, I know we've been getting a couple marketing things.
Yeah.
What I didn't forward you is a email that Bert sent us there with a link to some evidence, which I'll have to get to you.
Oh yeah, please.
It's somehow it got buried and I didn't catch it, and I found it just the other day.
Perfect. Please do.
So thank you, Bert, for being our first fan email. We appreciate it. And then obviously we are on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Audible, all those places with the podcast. You can find it the next day. Jamie, I've uploaded the last of the season 1 episodes. They're all queued. They're ready to go. I think it takes us through next week.
Yeah, it's
Um,
getting really close to the end of the season, and I was just I was perusing what dropped this week, and there's been a lot in the last couple of days for past episodes. And for those who are new to us at all, and we keep talking about Booby's Brewery, we do have an episode that just dropped this week, yesterday, I believe, that we did live from the brewery, going over the history and the haunts, and down in the vat room, which is 43 feet below ground, and
mhm.
a really cool space. So you get a chance, give it a listen. That's one I really enjoyed doing, of course, because it was you, I, and David, our original co-host. The
Right.
three of us were the first team here, and Dave stepped away to do some cool things on his side business and such. So miss you, Dave. Love you. But it was fun to get us all together, and the first time I think we all sat down together, to other than the planning and all that stuff, like 2 years ago now. My
Right.
gosh, starting this process. So it was really cool, and such a well. Obviously, the place is near and dear to all three of us, so and the
Mm.
whole team. So
Oh,
give it a,
good.
give it a listen, please. I think you'll like it. And for all of these episodes, please feel free to give us some comments, give us some stars, some feedback to let us know how we're doing. We obviously have good intentions of giving you great information every week, and having some fun with this, and hopefully something you didn't know. But
Mhm.
without any feedback, we don't know what we're missing. So, say nailed it, or you suck. We'll take both. It's okay.
Mhm.
Um, the truth will set us free. So we just need to know. So appreciate you,
Yeah.
and thanks for listening. No matter where you're finding us or watching, wherever you're finding us, we really do appreciate each and every one of you every week, and looking forward to giving you more.
Yeah. Hey, Jamie, do you remember the backstory, the behind the scenes story on our episode of the brewery? We were hoping to do it in the lower catacombs.
Yes, there was a banquet
And there was
that
a banquet there, and then we had people like going back and forth while we were trying to do our broadcast, like peeking in on us. And
yeah. So the interesting thing is the vat room is kind of like a room with a single entrance, and has these large vats in it, of wooden vats that's the name of the it's named appropriately.
Mhm.
But the folks who were in this banquet space had to pass by the room we were in to get to where the bar is on the upper floor. There's no bar service down there.
And the
Uh,
bathrooms.
and the bathrooms, yeah, which one goes with the other. So and we were set up with we're just in the back of the room with laptops and cameras up and everything, and everybody went by. We were like, "What are they doing?" I think I waved at a few of them, like, "Hey."
It was a fun
But it's
night.
different, and that's the thing about this place. There's always something happening there,
Yeah.
and Sam Allen, the owner, didn't. We planned this. We were going to go to a certain location, and he didn't even know there was a banquet scheduled. Like and that's not a bad thing to say. It's just there's so much happening, and he doesn't have operations every day. Hands-on operations every day. He has a banquet manager, and it's didn't communicate it, which is no big deal because there's so much other space there. And honestly, I think the vat room turned out much better anyway.
Yeah, I
As far
think
as
you're right.
information, it was really cool. So yeah, check
So,
it out. At some point,
yep,
just check.
it was fun. So,
All right, sir. Here we are at the end of another one.
we are. Yep.
What are we on? Which one was this? 57,800.
No, I meant to look this up. I think this may have been
It's a
a
round number, isn't it?
a round number, and it was Number 80, Jamie.
Bam.
So there you go.
All right.
80,
8-0.
80 under the belt. Like it's like so.
I was carrying some boxes earlier today, and I felt like I was 80 when I put them down. So, whew.
All right. Well, as you said earlier, we want to thank everybody for taking part in our Tuesday nights. It's important to us for you to be there. We hope that we're giving you something to just take home with you and enjoy, and just lighten up your evening. So uh, on that note, I think we can say good night, and we will see you next week, Jamie.
Perfect.
All
Looking
right.
forward to it.
Good night, everybody.
Take care.